My name is Mia, and I can still hear their laughter sharp and cruel, slicing through me like a jagged edge deeper than I ever imagined words could cut. It was a sticky July evening, the kind where the humidity wraps around you like a heavy blanket, and I found myself standing in the familiar chaos of my childhood living room, surrounded by family. Our annual gathering at my parents' house in suburban Ohio was meant to be a joyful occasion. Smoke from the barbecue wafting in from the backyard, the clatter of beer bottles, and my cousin's kids shrieking with delight as they darted through the sprinkler. But for me, that night became a wound, a raw and aching moment, when I realized how little they valued me, how desperately they wanted to keep me small. I was 27, still scraping by, in a tiny studio apartment, my jeans perpetually streaked with paint, my dreams too vast for anyone in that room to grasp. For 10 years, I'd poured my entire being into my art canvases alive, with swirling blues and blazing reds portraits of women shattering chains, landscapes that roared with the turmoil of my soul. Painting was my lifeline, my sanctuary, the one place I felt complete. But to them, it was a punchline. Mia, sweetheart. When are you going to find a real job? My Aunt Linda cooed, her voice laced with that condescending pity, her lips tight as she hacked at a watermelon on the kitchen counter. My uncle let out a hearty laugh, elbowing my dad. Yeah, Jim, your daughter's still messing with finger paints, huh? What is she, 5? The room exploded in chuckles. My cousins, my aunts, even my mom, who just shook her head and turned back to stirring the potato salad. I stood frozen, my fingers wrapped around a glass of tepid lemonade, my chest constricting like it was caught in a vice. My brother Ethan, the family's pride and joy, lounged back in his chair, his crisp suit a glaring contrast to my faded thrift store sweater. At 30, he was a corporate lawyer with a fancy corner office, a fiancé, and my parents' endless admiration. Mia, art's a pastime, not a career. He said, his voice steady but sharp, like he was delivering a verdict in court. You can't pay bills with sketches. Dad's right. Get an office job, grow up. My father nodded, his gray eyes sliding away from mine. We just want what's best for you, honey. This painting nonsense, it's not sensible. You're throwing away your time. Throwing away your time. The phrase ricocheted in my head, each word a blow to my heart. I wanted to shout to tell them how I'd stay up until the sky lightened blending colors, until my hands ached, how I'd skip dinner to buy canvas and oils, how every stroke of my brush carried my fears, my dreams, my fight. But my voice stayed trapped in my throat. I just stood there, the room tilting as their laughter crashed over me like a wave. My mom finally glanced up, her expression gentle but worn. Mia, we love you, but Ethan's got a point. We paid for art school, and where has it gotten you? Nowhere. You're nearly 30. It's time to face reality. Tears stung behind my eyes, hot and insistent, but I refused to let them spill, not here, not in front of them. I muttered something about needing fresh air and stumbled out to the porch, the screen door banging shut behind me. The night was thick, the hum of crickets filling the stillness, and I sank onto the steps, my hands shaking. I'd always known they didn't understand my family, with their steady jobs, their mortgages, their predictable lives. But to hear it so plainly, to feel their rejection like a punch to the gut, it broke something inside me. I loved them, yet in that moment I despised how they saw me. A dreamer, a failure, a little girl with a childish obsession. I fumbled for my phone, scrolling through pictures of my latest work. A massive 6-foot canvas I'd titled Unbound. It showed a woman with eyes like tempests, her hands stretching upward, snapping golden shackles in a burst of light. I'd poured every drop of my pain into it, every sleepless night, every gallery that turned me away, every moment I felt unseen. A month ago, I'd submitted it to a local art fair, a desperate leap, knowing the odds were slim. No one knew, not my parents, not Ethan, not even my best friend Lila. It was my quiet hope, fragile and precious. And as I sat there on the porch, their words pressing down on me, I wondered if they were right. Was I foolish? Was art a road to nowhere? I don't know how long I lingered the summer air, heavy and stifling, my thoughts spiraling. I felt like I was sinking, like the woman in my painting tangled in invisible chains. My whole life I'd been the misfit, too quiet as a child, too artsy in high school, too stubborn to quit when everyone begged me to. My parents worshipped Ethan, flaunted his law degree at every gathering, while I got sympathetic stares and stern talks. She's just different, my mom would sigh, as if it were a defect. And maybe it was. Maybe I'd never measure up. But then my mind drifted to my studio. My cramped, chaotic haven, the scent of turpentine, the way sunlight danced across my easel at dawn. It was the only place I felt alive, the only space where I didn't have to apologize for being me. I wiped my eyes, my breath uneven, and whispered to the night, "They don't see you, Mia, but you see you." I didn't know it then, but that night was a turning point, the first fracture in the wall I'd built. To please them, the first glimmer of a path forward. I dragged myself back inside, dodging their looks, and survived the rest of the evening. But the pain clung to me, a deep bruise on my spirit. I drove home to my apartment, the radio silent, their voices loud in my head. Childish, useless grow-up. I climbed the creaky stairs, unlocked my door, and stood before Unbound, staring into the storm eyes of the woman I'd painted. She seemed to stare back fierce and defiant, and for the first time that night, a spark of courage flickered in me. I didn't know what lay ahead, didn't know that painting would rewrite my story. But in that quiet moment, I made a vow to myself I wouldn't quit. Not for them, not for anyone. I collapsed onto my threadbare couch, still in my clothes, and let the tears flow. I wept for the girl I'd been, the one who'd tried so hard to fit their mold. I wept for the years I'd spent questioning myself, for every time their words dimmed my fire. But amid that hurt, something ignited, small, delicate, but undeniable. I didn't know how, but I'd show them. I'd prove what my useless art could become. The next morning I woke to a gray dawn, my eyes puffy, my heart heavy. I made coffee, the cheap kind that burned my throat, and sat at my tiny kitchen table, staring at the wall. Their words replayed, useless, childish, not sensible, and each one stung anew. I'd always been the dreamer, the one who saw colors in the rain, who felt stories in the wind. As a kid, I'd sketch for hours, losing myself in pencils and paper. But my parents never saw it as more than a phase. "She'll grow out of it," my dad would say, while Mom hung Ethan's report cards on the fridge. By college, I'd fought to study, art scraping by, on scholarships and part-time jobs at coffee shops, only to graduate into a world that didn't care. Galleries rejected me, bills piled up, and still I painted. I got up, paced my apartment, and stopped at my easel. Unbound loomed there, bold and alive, the woman's gaze daring me to keep going. I ran my fingers over the dried paint, feeling the ridges, the passion I'd poured into every stroke. I thought of the art fair, the slim chance I'd taken. What if nothing came of it? What if they were right? Doubt clawed at me, but I pushed it back. I'd spent too long shrinking for them, dimming my light to fit their expectations. No more. I spent the day painting, losing myself in a new canvas, dark purples and golds. A storm breaking open to reveal light. It was messy, raw like my heart, and with every brushstroke I felt a little stronger. I didn't tell anyone, not Lila, not my parents. This was mine, my quiet rebellion. Days turned into weeks, and I kept at it, working late, ignoring the ache in my hands, the growl of my empty stomach. Their laughter echoed, but I turned it into fuel, each jab a reason to fight harder. One morning my phone buzzed, a voicemail from an unknown number. My heart raced as I played it. "Maya, this is Elena Voss, curator, with the Meridian Art Collective. I saw Unbound at the fair. It's extraordinary. I'd love to talk, call me back." My hands shook, my breath caught. Elena Voss. The Elena Voss. She was a legend, a curator who'd launched careers, whose eye for talent was unmatched. I listened again, disbelieving. Someone saw me. Someone believed. I sat on the floor staring at Unbound, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled. The hurt from that night still lingered, but this was a lifeline. I called her back, my voice trembling, and we talked for an hour. She loved my work, saw the pain and power in it, and wanted to feature Unbound in an upcoming showcase. I hung up my heart, pounding a mix of fear and hope swirling in me. I didn't tell my family, how could I? They'd laugh or worse, dismiss it. But as I stood in my studio, paint splattered and tired, I felt a shift. I wasn't just the girl they mocked. I was Mia, the artist, and I was starting to believe in myself. Have you ever felt like that? Like the people who should lift you up are the ones holding you down. How do you keep fighting when their doubts drown out your own voice? I was just beginning to learn, and the road ahead was about to change everything. I woke up the next morning with my heart still racing. From Elena Voss's call, the curator's words echoing in my mind, like a lifeline extraordinary, she'd called my painting my Unbound. I sat on the edge of my lumpy mattress, the cheap coffee maker gurgling in my tiny kitchen, and stared at the canvas across the room. That woman with storm eyes and breaking shackles seemed to stare back, urging me to hold on to this sliver of hope. But as the high of that call lingered, the weight of my family's laughter from that humid July night crept back, in heavy and suffocating. I could still hear Aunt Linda's patronizing tone, my brother Ethan's calm dismissal, my parents' quiet agreement. Useless, childish, grow up. It clawed at me, and I felt myself teetering between belief and doubt, a tightrope I'd walked my whole life. I pulled on my paint-stained hoodie and sipped the bitter coffee, my hands still trembling from the night before. I wanted to call Lila my best friend since high school, but something held me back. Telling someone made it real, and what if this fell apart? What if Elena changed her mind? I paced my cramped studio apartment, the floor creaking under my feet, the walls lined with half-finished canvases, each one a piece of my heart, my hurt, my fight. I'd spent years pouring myself into these paintings, sacrificing sleep, meals, stability, all for this dream they called a waste. And now a glimmer of something recognition dangled in front of me, fragile as a thread. I sank onto my couch, the springs groaning, and buried my face in my hands. The tears came again, hot and unbidden, spilling over like they had after that family gathering. I felt raw, exposed, like every laugh and jab from that night had stripped me bare. I'd always been the quiet one, the weird one, the girl who'd rather sketch than socialize. My parents had tolerated my art as a kid, but by the time I hit college, their patience ran out. They'd paid for art school begrudgingly, hoping I'd get it out of my system, but when I graduated with no job, no plan, just a portfolio, and a fire in my chest, their disappointment turned to lectures. Ethan, with his law degree and six-figure salary, was their shining star. I was the dim flicker, the failure. And that night, their words had sunk in, deep, making me question everything. I wiped my face, my breath shaky, and stood to face Unbound again. I traced the golden shackles, the cracks of light bursting through, and whispered, "You're enough." But was I doubt gnawed at me, a hungry thing, and I felt the walls closing in the unpaid rent, the maxed-out credit card, the fear that I'd never make it. I wanted to call Elena back, to hear her say extraordinary again, but I couldn't. Not yet. I needed to steady myself, to find some footing in this storm. That afternoon, I bundled up against the late summer breeze and walked to the park near my apartment, a quiet spot, with a rickety bench and a view of wilting daisies. I brought my sketchbook, my fingers itching to create, to quiet the chaos in my head. I sat pencil in hand and drew rough lines at first, then a woman's face, her eyes wide with fear and hope, her hands clutching a fading star. It was me, I realized, pouring my heart onto the page. The wind tugged at the paper, and I lost myself in the rhythm of sketching the world fading away. That's when I heard her voice. "Mia, is that you?" I looked up startled to see Mrs. Clara, my high school art teacher, standing there in a faded cardigan, her silver hair pulled back, a grocery bag in her hand. She was in her late 60s now, her face lined with wisdom and warmth, the one person who'd seen something in me, back when I was a shy 16-year-old doodling in her class. I managed a weak smile, closing my sketchbook. "Mrs. Clara, hi. It's been a while." She sat beside me, her eyes crinkling. "You're still drawing, I see. Good. You always had a gift, Mia. A fire I don't see in many." I swallowed the lump in my throat, growing. "They don't think so?" I blurted the words spilling out before I could stop them. My family, I mean. At our last gathering, they laughed at me, called my art childish, told me to get a real job. They think I'm wasting my life. My voice cracked, and I looked away, ashamed of the tears welling up. Mrs. Clara set her bag down, her hand resting gently on my shoulder. "Oh, Mia," she said, her voice soft but steady. "People fear what they don't understand. Your art, it's your soul speaking. They can't hear it because they've never listened to their own." I blinked at her, my chest aching. She'd always been like this kind, direct seeing me when no one else did. In high school, she'd stayed late to help me with projects, told me my work had power, hung my paintings in the school hall. "But what if they're right?" I whispered. "What if I'm chasing something that'll never happen? I'm broke, I'm tired, and they're so sure I'll fail." She shook her head, her gaze fierce. "Mia, listen to me. The world is full of voices telling you to shrink, to fit their mold. But your art, it's your truth. I saw it then, those portraits, those colors, the way you made pain and hope dance on the canvas. You're not meant to be like them. You're meant to be you." Her words hit me like a wave, warm and steadying, and I felt something shift, a tiny crack of light in the darkness. I told her about the family gathering, the laughter, the way my parents fawned over Ethan, the way I'd felt invisible. And then, hesitantly, I told her about Elena Voss, the call, the showcase. Her face lit up, her hands clasping mine. "Mia, that's incredible. A curator like Elena Voss. She sees what I've always seen. You're on the edge of something darling. Don't let their doubts drown you now." We talked for an hour, the sun dipping low, casting golden light across the park. She told me about her own struggles, how she'd fought to teach art, when her family wanted her to be a nurse, how she'd clung to her passion through lean years and skepticism. "You're not alone, Mia," she said. "Every artist feels this, the weight of being misunderstood. But you keep going. You paint through the pain. That's your power." I nodded, tears slipping down my cheeks, a mix of grief and gratitude washing over me. For the first time since that awful night, I felt seen, like maybe I wasn't crazy to believe. I walked home as dusk settled the air cooler, my sketchbook clutched to my chest. "Mrs. Clara's words echoed your truth, your power, and I felt a flicker of strength, fragile but growing." I climbed the stairs to my apartment, my heart still heavy but lighter than before. I stood before Unbound, staring into those storm eyes, and I felt a connection, a promise. I grabbed my brushes, my hands trembling, not with fear but with purpose, and started a new canvas, blues and silvers. A woman rising from shadows, her face fierce and unbroken. I painted late into the night, the world quiet, my soul loud. The next few weeks were a blur. I called Elena back, my voice steadier, and we met at a coffee shop downtown. She was elegant, sharp, her eyes bright with passion as she talked about Unbound. "It's raw, Mia," she said, sipping her latte. "It's pain and triumph in one. I want it in my next showcase, televised exclusive, the art world's eyes on it. Are you ready?" My heart pounded, fear and excitement tangling, but I nodded. "I'm ready." She smiled, and I felt a surge of hope, like maybe this was my chance. But at home alone, the doubts crept back. I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, their voices in my head. Useless, not sensible, grow up. I'd think of my parents' disappointed sighs, Ethan's smug advice, the way they'd laughed like my dreams were a joke. I'd curl up, the ache in my chest, sharp, and wonder if I could do this. What if the showcase flopped? What if I let Elena down? I'd get up pace and paint, pouring the fear into every stroke, turning it into something fierce, something mine. Mrs. Clara called me a few days later, her voice warm through the phone. "How are you holding up, Mia?" I told her about the showcase, the nerves, the way my family's words still haunted me. "They don't define you," she said firmly. "You're building something, Mia. Let this be your first step. Paint, feel, fight. You've got this." I hung up tears in my eyes and felt a fire growing. I wasn't okay, not yet, but I was moving, stepping forward, even if my knees shook. I painted more, stayed up later, pushed harder. Every brushstroke was a defiance, a cry against their laughter. I didn't tell my family about Elena, the showcase, any of it. They didn't deserve to know, not yet. This was my battle, my heart, my art. And as the days ticked by, the hurt from that night lingered, but so did Mrs. Clara's belief, Elena's faith, and the tiny spark in me that refused to die. Have you ever been there? Clinging to a dream while the world tells you it's worthless? How do you find the strength to take that first step, to believe when no one else does? I was stumbling, but I was starting to see my art. My useless art was about to carry me somewhere they'd never imagine. I stood in my tiny studio apartment, the faint smell of turpentine hanging in the air, my hands still trembling from the weight of Elna Voss's words. Televised exclusive, the art world's eyes on it. The showcase was real, and Unbound was my ticket. But as the days rolled on, the thrill of that chance tangled with a storm of fear inside me. I stared at the canvas, the woman with storm eyes and breaking shackles, gazing back, and I felt her strength, but also my own fragility. My family's laughter from that sticky July night echoed in my skull Aunt Linda's pitying tone. Ethan's cold logic, my parents' quiet agreement, childish, useless, grow up. It was a wound that wouldn't heal, a raw ache that pulsed with every beat of my heart. And I wondered if I was strong enough to do this. I sipped cold coffee, the mug stained from weeks of neglect, and paced the creaky floor of my apartment. The showcase was 3 weeks away, and Elna had been clear Unbound would be the centerpiece. But she wanted more, 2 new pieces to complement it, to show the world who I was as an artist. The pressure settled on my chest like a stone. I'd barely slept since our meeting, my mind racing with doubt. What if my new work wasn't good enough? What if the art world laughed at me too, just like my family? I sank onto my couch, the springs creaking, and buried my face in my hands, my breath shaky. The tears came again, silent and hot, spilling over. As I thought of that night, the way their voices had stripped me bare made me feel small and worthless. I wanted to call Mrs. Clara, my high school art teacher, the one person who'd believed in me when I was a shy kid with a sketchbook. Her words from the park, "Your truth, your power," still lingered a lifeline in this chaos. But I couldn't bring myself to dial her number. I felt exposed like a fraud, teetering on the edge of failure. Instead, I grabbed my brushes, my hands moving on instinct, and started on a new canvas. I mixed deep indigos and fiery oranges, painting a woman tangled in thorns. Her face etched with pain, but her eyes burning with defiance. It was me, my hurt, my fight, my refusal to break. I painted until the sky outside my window turned pink, then gray, my fingers cramping my stomach, growling. I didn't stop. This was my anchor, the only thing that made sense. Later that day, I met Lila, my best friend since high school, at a dingy diner near my place. She slid into the booth, her curly hair wild, her smile bright, and tossed her bag down. "Mia, you look like you haven't slept in a month," she said, her voice teasing but soft. I managed a weak laugh, stirring my coffee, the spoon clinking against the cup. I hadn't told her about Elena, the showcase, any of it. I'd kept it locked inside, too scared to let it out. But as we sat there, the smell of greasy fries and burnt toast in the air, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Lila," I started, my voice trembling. Something's happening. A curator, Elena Voss, she saw Unbound. She wants it in a televised showcase. And she wants more paintings. I'm terrified. Her eyes widened, her fork frozen midair. Mia, that's insane, Elena Voss. She's huge. Your art on TV. This is your shot. She grabbed my hand, her excitement, a warm wave crashing over my fear. I smiled, but it wobbled, and the words tumbled out. The family gathering their laughter, the way my parents fawned over Ethan, the way I'd felt invisible. They called it useless, Lila. I whispered, my throat tight. They think I'm a joke. What if they're right? What if I crash and burn? Tears stung my eyes, and I looked down, ashamed of my weakness. Lila squeezed my hand, her gaze fierce. Mia, listen to me. They don't get you. They never have. Your art. It's magic. I've seen you pour your soul into it every late night, every time you chose paint over food. This is your chance to show the world what I've always known: you're incredible. Her voice was steady, unwavering, and I felt a warmth bloom in my chest, a flicker of belief. She leaned closer, her brown eyes locked on mine. You're scared, and that's okay, but you've got this. You're stronger than their words, Mia. Don't let them dim you now. I nodded, wiping my eyes, my heart aching but lifting. Lila had always been my rock back in high school. She'd cheer at my art shows, sneak me snacks when I was broke, tell me I was enough when I doubted it. We talked for hours, the diner's fluorescent lights buzzing above us, and she helped me brainstorm. Paint what hurts, she said. That's your power. Show them the Mia. I see the fighter, the dreamer. I left the diner feeling lighter, her belief a shield against the storm in my mind. I hugged her tight, her perfume lingering, and whispered, "Thank you, Lila. I don't know what I'd do without you." Back home, I threw myself into the new paintings. The first thorned heart was the woman in thorns, her defiance growing with every stroke. The second I called Flicker, a canvas of silvers and golds, a figure emerging from darkness, a tiny flame in her hands, my hope, small but stubborn. I worked day and night, the clock a blur, my apartment a mess of paint tubes and takeout boxes. My hands shook, my eyes burned, but I kept going, fueled by Lila's faith. Mrs. Clara's words, and a quiet fire in me that refused to die. Every stroke was a battle, a scream against their laughter, a step toward proving I wasn't the failure they saw. But the doubts didn't vanish. At night alone, I'd lie awake, the ceiling staring back. My family's voices, loud, useless, not sensible, grow up. I'd think of my mom's tired sigh, my dad's averted eyes, Ethan's smug certainty. I'd curl up, the ache in my chest, sharp, and wonder if I was fooling myself. What if the showcase flopped? What if the art world saw me the way they did? I'd get up, pace, and paint, pouring the fear into my work, turning it into something raw, something real. Thorned heart grew darker, the thorns sharper, the woman's eyes fiercer. Flicker glowed brighter, the flame a beacon in the shadows. I was breaking, but I was building too. Elena called a week later, her voice crisp through the phone. "Mia, I've secured the venue. The showcase is in 2 weeks, televised, live critics, collectors, the works. Your new pieces ready?" My heart lurched, panic and excitement colliding. Almost I managed my voice shaky. "Good," she said. "They're going to love you, Mia. Keep pushing." I hung up, my pulse racing, and stared at my canvases. They were messy, imperfect, but they were me, my pain, my hope, my fight. I didn't tell my family. They didn't deserve to know, not after that night. This was mine, my secret, my chance to rise. I kept painting, losing myself in the colors, the textures, the story of each piece. I'd stand back, covered in paint, and feel a quiet strength growing. Lila dropped by one night, bringing pizza and a grin. "These are stunning, Mia," she said, staring at thorned heart and flicker. "You're doing it. You're showing them all." I hugged her, tears in my eyes, and felt the weight lift a little more. Mrs. Clara texted me too. "You've got this, darling. Paint your truth." Their belief carried me, a lifeline through the exhaustion, the fear. The days ticked down, and I barely slept, barely ate my world shrinking to my studio. I'd catch my reflection in the window, pale, tired, paint-streaked. But my eyes burned with something new, a fire I hadn't felt before. Their laughter still hurt a deep bruise on my soul, but I was moving, stumbling forward, fighting for myself. I'd think of that night, the way they dismissed me, and I'd grip my brush tighter, paint harder, turn their words into fuel. I wasn't okay, not fully, but I was trying, clawing my way up from the hurt. One night I sat on the floor, flicker glowing in front of me, and I cried, not from pain, but from something else, a release. I was scared, terrified of failing, but I was doing this. For me, for the girl they'd laughed at, for the artist they couldn't see. I whispered to the canvas, "We're enough," and felt a spark grow, a quiet defiance. The showcase loomed, a chance to be seen, and I didn't know if I'd soar or fall, but I was ready to try. Have you ever felt that pull? That mix of fear and fire pushing you to fight for your dream? How do you keep going when the hurt runs deep, when the stakes feel impossible? I was trembling, but I was stepping forward, and something big was waiting. I stood in my cramped studio, the air thick with the scent of paint and turpentine, my heart pounding as I stared at Thorned Heart and Flicker, my two new pieces for Elena's showcase. The woman tangled in thorns, her eyes fierce with defiance, and the figure cradling a tiny flame emerging from shadows. They were me, raw and real, my pain and hope spilled across the canvas. The showcase was 10 days away, a televised event that could change everything, and the weight of it pressed down on me, a mix of terror and a quiet, burning thrill. I could still hear my family's laughter from that humid July night. Useless childish grow up, my Aunt Linda's pity. Ethan's cold logic, my parents' disappointed sighs. The hurt lingered, a deep ache in my chest, but something was shifting inside me. A spark growing into a flame, fueled by Lila's belief, Mrs. Clara's encouragement, and Elena's faith in my art. I ran my fingers over the dried paint of Flicker, feeling the texture, the layers of my struggle. I'd barely slept, my days and nights a blur of painting coffee and doubt. My apartment was a mess, empty takeout containers, scattered brushes, paint tubes littering the floor, but I didn't care. This was my fight, my chance to prove I wasn't the failure they saw. I'd finished the new pieces, and Elena had come by yesterday, her sharp eyes scanning my work. "Mia," she'd said, her voice steady, "these are powerful. Thorned Heart is visceral. Flicker is hope reborn. You're ready." Her words lit me up, but as I stood alone, now doubt crept in. What if the critics hated me? What if I crumbled under the spotlight? I shook my head, pushing the fear away, and grabbed my jacket. I needed air, a moment to breathe. I walked to the park, the late summer breeze, cool against my skin, and sat on that rickety bench, my sketchbook in my lap. I sketched absent-mindedly swirls of color, a woman standing tall, her shadow stretching long behind her. I was changing, I could feel it. The girl who'd cowered on my parents' porch, stung by their laughter, was still there. But a stronger Mia was rising, one who believed in her art, in herself. I thought of Mrs. Clara's words, "Your truth, your power," and Lila's fierce support, "You're incredible." I clung to them, anchors in the storm. Back home, I got a call from Elena. "Mia, good news," she said, her voice crackling with excitement. "A collector saw a preview of Unbound online and loves it. He's coming to the showcase, and he's connected big name, big influence. This could be huge." My heart leapt, my hands trembling as I gripped the phone. "Really, thank you, Elena." She laughed softly. "Don't thank me, Mia. This is you, your talent, your heart. Just keep being you." I hung up my chest tight with a wild mix of joy and panic. A collector. Someone saw me, valued me before the showcase even began. I sat on the floor staring at my canvases and felt a tear slip down my cheek, not from pain, but from a fragile, growing hope. I threw myself into preparing. Elena sent me to meet with a gallery assistant, a kind woman named Sarah, who helped me frame Unbound Thorned Heart and Flicker. We worked in a dusty back room, the smell of wood and glue sharp, and she smiled as we lifted each piece. "These are stunning, Mia," she said. "You've got something special. The art world's going to buzz about you." I blushed, my heart swelling, and for the first time I let myself imagine it, people seeing my work, feeling my story, not laughing but understanding. We packed the paintings carefully, and as I watched them loaded into a van for the venue, I felt a surge of pride, a quiet strength I hadn't known I had. The days raced by, and I kept painting, sketching, refining. I started a new piece, unplanned, just for me. Deep greens and golds, a woman stepping out of a storm. Her face calm, her hands open. I called it Rise, and it felt like a mirror, reflecting the Mia I was becoming. I'd stand back, paint splattered and exhausted, and see something new in myself. Courage, resilience, a fire they couldn't dim. My family's words still stung their voices, haunting my quiet moments, useless, not sensible, but I was learning to push them aside, to hear my own voice instead. I didn't tell them about the showcase. They didn't deserve to know, not after they'd tried to crush me. Lila came by one night, her arms full of takeout, her grin wide. "Mia, you're glowing," she said, setting the bags on my cluttered table. We ate greasy noodles, laughing as she teased me about my paint-streaked hair. "You're doing this, you know," she said, her eyes serious. "You're rising above them. I'm so proud of you." I hugged her, tears pricking my eyes, and felt the weight of her belief settle over me like a warm blanket. Later, Mrs. Clara texted, "You're becoming, Mia. Keep shining." Their words carried me, lifting me higher than my family's doubts ever could. The showcase was a week away, and Elna invited me to the venue, a sleek gallery downtown with high ceilings and bright lights. I walked in my sneakers squeaking on the polished floor and felt small but alive. She showed me where my pieces would hang, center stage spotlights, ready to illuminate Unbound Thorned Heart and Flicker. "This is your moment, Mia," she said, her hand on my shoulder. "The cameras, the critics, the collectors, they'll see you. Be ready." I nodded, my throat tight, my heart racing with a mix of fear and fire. I could feel it, something big, something real was coming. Back home, I painted Late Rise. Taking shape, the woman's calm face, a balm to my nerves. I'd catch my reflection in the window, tired, messy, but strong, my eyes bright with purpose. The hurt from that family gathering still lingered, a bruise on my soul, but it was fading, overtaken by this new strength. I was winning not for them, but for me. I'd think of their laughter, their dismissal, and grip my brush tighter, painting my pain into power. I wasn't the girl they mocked anymore. I was Mia the artist, and I was claiming my space. The night before the final preparations, I sat on my couch, a cold cup of coffee in hand, and stared at my canvases. My hands shook, not just from exhaustion, but from the weight of what was coming. A televised showcase, critics, collectors, people who could lift me up or tear me down. I felt the fear sharp and cold, but beneath it, a fire burned steady and fierce. I thought of Mrs. Clara, Lila, Elena, their belief in me, their voices louder than my family's scorn. I whispered to myself, "You're enough, Mia," and for the first time, I almost believed it. I got up, paced, and stood before Rise. The woman stared back, calm and unyielding, and I felt a connection, a promise. I was scared, terrified of failing, but I was here fighting for my dream. I'd spent years shrinking, doubting, letting their words define me. But now I was stepping forward, claiming my worth. The showcase was close, and I didn't know if I'd soar or stumble, but I was ready to try. I ran my fingers over Unbound, the golden shackles snapping, and felt a surge of defiance. They'd laughed at my useless art, but I was building something they couldn't imagine. Have you ever felt that shift, that moment when you start to see yourself, not through their eyes but your own? How do you find the courage to rise, to fight for your truth, when the world tries to hold you back? I was trembling, but I was moving, and the path ahead was mine to claim. I stood in the middle of the sleek downtown gallery, the air buzzing with the hum of technicians. Adjusting spotlights and the faint clatter of frames being hung, my heart thumping so loud I swore everyone could hear it. The showcase was 3 days away, and my paintings, Unbound Thorned Heart and Flicker, were being mounted on the stark white walls, their colors blazing under the lights. The woman breaking free from golden shackles, the figure tangled in thorns, the silhouette cradling a fragile flame, they were me, my soul laid bare, and seeing them here in this real, tangible space made my chest ache with a wild mix of pride and panic. My family's laughter from that humid July night still echoed useless, childish, grow up my Aunt Linda's pity, Ethan's cold judgment, my parents' quiet disappointment. The hurt lingered a shadow in my heart, but I was rising, fueled by Lila's fierce support, Mrs. Clare's wisdom, and Elena's belief in my art. I ran my fingers along the edge of Unbound, the paint rough under my touch, and felt a shiver. Elena paced nearby, her sharp eyes scanning every detail, directing the crew with a calm authority. She caught my gaze and smiled, walking over. "Mia, it's coming together," she said, her voice steady. "The collector I mentioned. He's bringing others big names, Mia. They're talking about you already." My stomach flipped, a rush of excitement tangled with fear. People were talking about me, the girl they'd laughed at, the one they'd called a failure. I managed a nod, my throat tight. "I'm trying to be ready, Elena." She squeezed my shoulder. "You are. Your work speaks, Mia. Let it." I left the gallery, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the street, and walked home, my mind racing. I felt different, stronger, taller, like the Mia who'd cowered on my parents' porch was fading, replaced by someone new. I'd spent years doubting, shrinking to fit their mold, but now with my art on those walls, I was starting to see myself. At home, I stood before Rise, my newest canvas, the woman stepping out of a storm, her face calm, her hands open. I painted late, adding silvers and deep blues, pouring my hope into every stroke. It was messy, raw, but it was mine, and with each brush stroke, I felt my strength grow, a quiet fire, pushing back the pain of that night. The next day, I met Lila at my apartment, the smell of fresh coffee mixing with paint. She burst in, her curls bouncing, her eyes bright. "Mia, I snuck a peek at the gallery yesterday. Your stuff looks amazing, you're killing it." I laughed, a real laugh, the first in weeks, and hugged her tight. "I'm terrified, Lila," I admitted, my voice soft. "What if I mess this up? What if they hate it?" She pulled back her hands on my shoulders, her gaze fierce. "They won't, Mia. Your art, it's you, it's real. You're showing the world what I've always seen. You've got this." Her belief wrapped around me, warm and steady, and I felt my doubts ease just a little. I spent the next 2 days preparing, my hands shaking as I packed a bag with sketches, cleaned my brushes, and picked a simple black dress for the showcase. Nothing fancy but me. Elena called again, her voice buzzing. "Mia, we've got press coming, art blogs, a local news channel. Even a critic from the Tribune. Your story's spreading." My heart leapt, my breath catching. Press critics. I felt the weight, the stakes rising, but beneath it a thrill pulsed. I was being seen, not as the failure my family saw, but as an artist, a voice. I didn't tell them, my parents, Ethan, my aunts. They'd laughed at my useless art, and this victory was mine, not theirs. The night before the showcase, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my couch, a cold mug in my hands, staring at my canvases. The hurt from that family gathering lingered, my mom's tired sigh, my dad's averted eyes, Ethan's smug advice. But it was quieter now, drowned by a growing certainty. I was doing this, stepping into a spotlight they couldn't imagine. I got up, paced, and stood before Rise. The woman stared back, calm and strong, and I whispered, "We're doing this." I felt a surge, a defiance, a belief in myself I'd never known. I was scared, my stomach in knots, but I was ready to fight for my place. The morning of the showcase, I arrived at the gallery early. The air alive with energy cameras being set up, lights humming, people bustling. My paintings glowed on the walls, bold and unapologetic, and I felt a swell of pride. Sarah, the gallery assistant, grinned at me. "Mia, it's stunning. You're the talk of the night already." I blushed, my heart racing, and helped adjust flicker my hands. Trembling but steadying. Elena pulled me aside, her eyes bright. "Mia, the collector's here and 2 others serious buyers. Your work's resonating. Be you tonight, okay? That's enough." I knotted my chest tight, a mix of fear and fire burning inside. As guests arrived, the gallery filled people in suits, artists in quirky scarves, reporters with notepads. I stood near unbound, my black dress feeling too thin, my hands clasped to hide the shaking. A woman in a red coat approached, her eyes wide. "You're Mia. This piece, it's haunting, powerful. I feel her struggle. How did you do this?" I swallowed, my voice shaky but growing. "It's me," I said. "My pain, my fight. I painted what I felt." She nodded, her gaze soft, and I felt a connection, a spark. Others came, questions, praise, gasps, and I spoke. Hesitant at first, then stronger, telling my story, my heart opening. A critic from the Tribune, a stern man with glasses, studied thorned heart, then turned to me. "This is raw, Mia. It's bold, emotional. You've got a voice. Expect a write-up." My eyes burned with tears, but I smiled, my chest swelling. People saw me, really saw me. Not the girl my family mocked, but the artist I was becoming. I caught Elena's eye across the room, and she winked, her pride clear. Lila slipped in, hugging me tight. "Mia, look at this. You're shining." I laughed, tears slipping free, and felt the weight of years, doubt, hurt, fear, lifting just a little. The night blurred on voices and faces swirling. A collector, a tall man in a gray suit, shook my hand. "Unbound speaks to me," he said. "It's struggle, triumph. I'm bidding tomorrow at the auction. You're going places, Mia." My heart soared, my breath catching. Bidding auction. I nodded, stunned, and felt a shift, my status, my place changing before my eyes. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was Mia the artist, and people were listening. I stepped outside for air, the night cool, the city humming. I leaned against the wall, my heart pounding, and thought of that July night, their laughter cutting deep. They'd called my art useless, but here tonight, it was powerful, valued, alive. I felt stronger, taller, like I was claiming my space. The hurt still lingered, a quiet ache, but it fueled me, now driving me forward. I was winning, not for them, but for me, for the girl who'd refused to quit. I went back in the gallery, bright and alive, and stood before Flicker, the tiny flame glowing. I felt that flame in me, steady and growing, lighting a path I'd never dared dream. The auction was tomorrow, and I didn't know what would happen, but I was here, fighting, rising. I whispered to myself, "You're enough, Mia," and this time I believed it. A quiet strength settling in my bones. Have you ever felt that moment, when you start to rise, to see your worth, despite the voices trying to pull you down? How do you hold on to that fire, that belief, when everything's on the line? I was scared, but I was here and I was ready to shine. I woke up the morning of the auction with my heart racing, a wild drumbeat in my chest. The weight of the day pressing down like a storm cloud, ready to burst. Last night's showcase had been a blur, people's faces, their gasps, their praise. For Unbound, Thorned Heart, and Flicker still echoed in my mind, a fragile glow against the darkness of my doubts. I lay in bed, the thin sheets tangled around me, staring at the ceiling of my cramped studio apartment, the faint smell of paint lingering in the air. My family's laughter from that humid July night clawed at me, useless, childish. Grow up, my Aunt Linda's pitying tone, Ethan's cold verdict, my parents' quiet disapproval. The hurt was still there, a deep bruise on my soul, but I was stronger now, lifted by Lila's fierce loyalty, Mrs. Clara's steady wisdom, and Elena's unshakable belief in my art. I rolled out of bed, my bare feet hitting the cold floor, and made coffee, the bitter scent grounding me. I stood before my newest canvas, Rise the woman stepping out of a storm, her face calm, her hands open, and I felt her strength in me. Today was the auction televised high stakes with collectors and critics watching. Elena had texted me last night. Mia there buzzing. Unbound is the star. Be ready for big things. My stomach twisted, a mix of fear and fire, but I felt a shift. I wasn't just the girl they'd laughed at. I was Mia the artist, and I was claiming my place. I pulled on my black dress from the showcase, simple and worn, but mine, and headed to the gallery. The city buzzed outside, cars honking the air, crisp with late summer fading into fall, and my heart pounded as I stepped inside. The space was alive, cameras, rigged lights, glaring a crowd, gathering suits, scarves, notepads, anticipation, thick in the air. My paintings glowed on the walls. Unbound at the center, the woman's storm eyes, fierce, her golden shackles snapping. I ran my fingers over the frame, my hands trembling, and felt a surge of pride. This was me, my heart, my fight, and they were seeing it. Elena found me, her eyes bright, her energy electric. "Mia, you're the talk of the room," she said, guiding me through the crowd. 3 collectors are circling big players. Unbound is hot, and Thorned Heart and Flicker are turning heads. "You're doing this." My breath caught my chest, tight with a wild hope. I nodded, my voice shaky. "I'm trying, Elena. I'm so nervous." She smiled, her hand on my arm. "You're enough, Mia. Your art speaks. Let it shine." Her words steadied me, a lifeline, and I felt my spine straighten, my fire growing. The auction began, the room humming, the auctioneer's voice, sharp and rhythmic. I stood at the back, my hands clasped tight, my pulse racing. Smaller pieces went first, paintings, sculptures, numbers climbing. Then Flicker came up, the figure with her tiny flame, glowing under the lights. "We start at 5,000, the auctioneer called, and paddles shot up, voices overlapping. 10,000, 15, 20. My heart leapt, my eyes burning. $20,000. For my work, Lila slipped beside me, her hand squeezing mine, her whisper fierce. "Mia, look at this. You're killing it." I squeezed back, tears pricking, a laugh escaping me. Thorned Heart was next. The woman in thorns, her defiance bold. Bidding started at 10,000, and it soared 20, 30, 50,000. I covered my mouth, my body trembling, disbelief and joy crashing through me. People saw me, really saw me. Not the failure my family named me, but the artist I'd fought to be. The crowd murmured, heads turning, and I caught a reporter's gaze, her pen flying across her notepad. I felt taller, stronger, the hurt from that July night fading against this light. Then came Unbound, my heart on the wall, the woman breaking free, her eyes alive. The auctioneer's voice boomed. "We start at 50,000 for this stunning piece, by Mia Reynolds." Paddles flew the room, electric. 75, 100, 150. My knees wobbled, Lila's arm around me, holding me up. "Mia, oh my God," she whispered, her voice thick. The numbers climbed, 200,000, 300, 500. I couldn't breathe, my chest tight, tears slipping down my cheeks. A man in a gray suit, the collector from last night, raised his paddle again. 1 million. The room gasped, and I froze, my heart stopping. $1 million. For my useless art, the gavel fell. Sold for $1 million to bidder 42. The crowd erupted, claps, murmurs, cheers, and I stood there shaking, tears, streaming, a wild joy flooding me. Lila hugged me tight, laughing, crying. "Maya, you did it. You're a star." Elena rushed over, her face glowing. "Mia, I told you, extraordinary. You're the art world's new sensation." I nodded, speechless, my chest bursting. I wasn't invisible. I was seen, valued, my art. A voice they couldn't silence. The night blurred, reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, questions flew. "Mia, what inspired Unbound?" a woman with a mic asked. I took a breath, my voice shaky, but growing. "It's me," I said. "My pain, my fight to be seen." I poured my heart into it. Every time I felt small, I painted. "This is my story." She nodded, her eyes soft, and I felt a connection, a power. Critics praised, collectors shook my hand, and I stood taller, my fear melting into strength. A blog post went live, Mia Reynolds' art's new voice. Stuns at auction, and my phone buzzed the world, shifting beneath me. I stepped outside the night, cool, the city alive. I leaned against the wall, my heart racing, and thought of that July night, their laughter cutting deep. They'd called my art childish, a waste, but tonight it sold for millions, and I was the name on everyone's lips. The hurt still lingered, a quiet ache, but it fueled me, driving my fire. I was winning not for them, but for me. I felt rise in my bones, the woman stepping out of the storm, and I knew I was her, calm, strong, unyielding. Back inside, the crowd still buzzed, and I caught my reflection in a glass door, tired, paint-streaked, but fierce, my eyes bright. I was Mia the artist, and the world was seeing me. Lila grinned, her arm around me. "You're unstoppable, Mia." I knew it. I smiled, tears welling, and felt my strength grow, a fire they couldn't dim. The hurt from my family's words was there, but it was smaller now, drowned by this triumph, this proof of my worth. I didn't tell them, my parents, Ethan, my aunts. They didn't deserve to know, not after they'd tried to break me. This was mine, my victory, my rise. I stood before Unbound, the woman's storm eyes meeting mine, and whispered, "We did it." My heart swelled, a mix of joy and defiance, and I felt ready, ready for the world, ready to be me. The night stretched on cameras, rolling voices praising, and I knew this was just the beginning, a path I'd carved from pain to power. Have you ever felt that rush? When you prove to yourself you're more than their doubts, when you rise stronger than ever. How do you hold on to that? Keep that fire burning when the world finally sees you? I was trembling, but I was soaring, and I wasn't turning back. I stood in the gallery, the air still buzzing from the auction, my heart pounding like a drum as the reality sank in. Unbound had sold for $1 million, and my name, Mia Reynolds, was on everyone's lips. The lights blazed, cameras flashed, and the crowd, collectors, critics, strangers, swirled around me. Their voices, a hum of praise for thorned heart flicker, and the peace that changed everything. I felt the weight of that humid July night. My family's laughter, useless, childish, grow up, my Aunt Linda's pity, Ethan's cold judgment, my parents' quiet dismissal. The hurt lingered, a deep ache, but it was drowned by this fire. This triumph fueled by Lila's fierce loyalty, Mrs. Clara's steady belief, and Elena's vision. I was no longer the girl they mocked. I was an artist, seen, valued, soaring. The night stretched on, and I moved through it in a daze, shaking hands, answering reporters. "Mia, how does it feel to be the art world's new star?" A journalist asked, her mic thrust toward me. My voice trembled, but I stood tall. "It's overwhelming," I said, my heart racing. I painted my pain, my fight, and to have it mean something to others, it's everything. She smiled, and I felt a surge of strength, a connection to this new world opening before me. My phone buzzed endlessly, texts, notifications, articles calling me a sensation. I was changing, my status shifting, and I could feel it in my bones. Elena pulled me aside, her eyes gleaming. "Mia, this is just the start. Galleries are calling. Collectors want more, and a museum rep asked about a solo exhibit. You're in demand." My chest tightened, joy and fear colliding. A solo exhibit. I nodded, speechless, my hands shaking. Lila hugged me, her laugh bright. "Mia, you're a rock star." "They see you now," I hugged her back, tears slipping free, my heart swelling. The hurt from that family gathering still stung, but I was rising, claiming my place, and it felt like a dream. Then my phone buzzed again, a text from my mom. "Mia, we saw the auction on TV. $1 million, we need to talk." My breath caught, my stomach twisting. They'd seen it, my parents, maybe Ethan, my aunts on the televised broadcast. My name splashed across the screen, my paintings sold for millions. I stared at the words, my hands trembling, the memory of their laughter crashing back. They'd called my art useless, told me to grow up, and now they wanted to talk. I didn't respond, my heart. A storm of anger hurt, and a fierce, quiet pride. This was mine, not theirs. I slipped outside. The night air cool against my flushed skin, the city humming beyond the gallery. I leaned against the wall, my black dress clinging to me, and let the tears come hot messy, a release of years of doubt. I thought of that July night, standing on their porch, their voices cutting me down. They'd made me feel small, invisible, but tonight the world saw me. I wiped my eyes, my breath shaky, and felt a fire burn brighter. I wasn't doing this for them, for their approval, their pride. I was doing it for me, for the girl who'd painted through the pain, who'd refused to quit. Back inside, the crowd thinned, but the energy lingered. A man approached my uncle, the one who'd laughed loudest, his face red, his eyes wide. "Mia, we saw it on TV." He stammered, his voice unsteady. 1 million, I had no idea. We're so proud, honey. I stared at him, my chest tight, anger flaring. Proud, I wanted to laugh, to scream. "You laughed at me," I said, my voice low, trembling. "You called my art childish, a waste. You told me to get a real job." He flinched, his mouth opening, then closing, his hands fidgeting. "Mia, we didn't know. We're sorry. You're amazing." I took a breath, my hands clenched, the hurt, raw and alive. My mom and dad appeared, their faces pale, their eyes darting. "Mia, sweetheart," my mom said, her voice soft, shaky. "We saw the auction. We didn't understand. Your art, it's incredible. We're so sorry we doubted you." My dad nodded, his gray eyes meeting mine, wet with something like regret. "We were wrong, Mia. We just wanted you to be safe, but look at you. We're proud." My heart twisted, anger, pain, a flicker of longing. I'd craved their pride, their belief, but now it felt hollow, too late. Ethan stepped forward, his suit crisp, his face tight. "Mia, I saw it too. $1 million, I underestimated you. I'm sorry." His voice cracked, his confidence gone, and I saw shame in his eyes, the golden child humbled. I stood there, my pulse racing, the room spinning. They were here scrambling, apologizing, stunned by my useless art. I wanted to yell, to tell them how they'd broken me, how their laughter had haunted me. But I took a breath, my voice steady, strong. "You didn't see me," I said, looking at each of them. "You laughed, told me I'd fail, but I didn't do this for you. I did it for me, my heart, my art. You don't get to claim this now." They stood silent, my mom's eyes welling, my dad's head, dipping, Ethan's jaw tight. My uncle mumbled, "We're sorry." Mia and they backed away, their faces a mix of shock and guilt. I turned, my chest heaving and faced unbound, the woman's storm eyes fierce, breaking free. I felt her in me, defiant, unyielding. The crowd watched, cameras rolled, and I stood taller, my fire blazing. They'd tried to dim me, but I'd risen, and this moment, their shock, their shame, my triumph, felt like a wave, crashing, washing away years of pain. Lila squeezed my hand, her eyes bright. "You told them, Mia. I'm so proud." Elena nodded, her smile wide. "You're a force, Mia." I smiled, tears burning, my heart full. The hurt was there, a quiet scar, but I was stronger, free. I walked through the gallery, people clapping, whispering my name, and I felt the shift, my status, my worth undeniable. My art, once mocked, was power, and I was no longer their failure. I was Mia, the artist, the sensation, and the world knew it. I stepped to the center, a reporter's mic in my face. "Mia, your family's here. How does it feel to prove them wrong?" I took a breath, my voice clear, strong. "It's not about proving them wrong," I said. "It's about proving me right." I believed in my art, even when they didn't. This is my fight, my heart, and I'm here. The crowd cheered, and I felt a rush, a fire, my soul alight. They'd laughed, but I'd won, and this moment was mine. Have you ever faced that? The people who doubted you, suddenly seeing you shine? How do you stand tall, claim your victory, when they try to pull you back? I was shaking, but I was strong, and I was ready for what came next. I stood in the gallery, the echo of the crowd's cheers still ringing in my ears, my heart pounding as the weight of the night settled over me like a warm, heavy cloak. Unbound had sold for $1 million. Thorned Heart and Flicker had stunned the room, and My Name Mia Reynolds was a whisper on every lip, a headline in the making. The cameras flashed, the air buzzed with voices, and I felt the shift the world. Seeing me not as the girl my family mocked, but as an artist, a force, a sensation. Their laughter from that humid July night, useless childish grow up, still lingered a faint scar on my soul. My Aunt Linda's pity, Ethan's cold dismissal, my parents' quiet doubt. But I'd risen carried by Lila's fierce loyalty, Mrs. Clara's steady faith, and Elena's vision, and now, standing here, I was free. The night wound down the crowd, thinning the lights softening. I stood before Unbound, the woman's storm eyes fierce, her golden shackles broken, and I felt her in me, defiant, unyielding, alive. My family had lingered after our confrontation, their faces etched with shock and guilt, their apologies hanging heavy. My mom approached again, her eyes wet, her hands twisting. "Mia, sweetheart, we were wrong," she said, her voice trembling. "We didn't see you, didn't understand. Can you forgive us?" My dad stood behind her, his gray eyes soft pleading. "We're so proud, Mia. We love you. We messed up." Ethan shifted nearby. His suit rumpled, his gaze low. "I'm sorry, Mia. I should have believed in you." I stared at them, my chest a storm. Anger, hurt, a flicker of longing. I'd craved their love, their pride, for so long spent years aching to be seen. Their words now, after the laughter, the dismissal felt fragile, late. I took a breath, my hands steady my voice, calm but firm. "I hear you," I said. "I wanted you to believe in me, to see me, but you didn't. You laughed, told me my art was useless. I can't erase that." My mom's tears fell, my dad's head dipped. Ethan's jaw tightened. "I love you," I continued, my throat tight, "but I don't need your validation anymore. I fought for this, my art, my worth. I'm here because of me." They stood silent, their eyes heavy, and I turned away, my heart aching but light, a weight lifting. I walked to the center of the gallery, the remaining guests watching, cameras still rolling. Elena joined me, her smile warm. "Mia, you've done it. Offers are pouring in. Galleries commissions a solo show next spring. You're unstoppable." Lila hugged me, her laugh bright. "Mia, you're a star. I knew you'd shine." I smiled, tears burning my chest full. The hurt from my family lingered, a quiet echo, but it no longer defined me. I was Mia the artist, and my worth was mine, carved from pain, painted in color, proven in this moment. I stepped outside the night, cool the city, alive with lights and sound. I leaned against the wall, my black dress worn and simple, and let the tears come soft, cleansing, a release. I thought of that July night, their laughter cutting deep, and then of tonight, my art, my fight, selling for millions, touching hearts. I pulled a small sketchbook from my bag, a worn thing I'd carried since high school, its pages filled with dreams, doubts, and defiance. I flipped to a blank page, my pencil moving, sketching a woman standing tall as storm behind her, a light in her hands, me risen free. This sketchbook, my constant companion, was my symbol, my quiet strength through every jab, every tear. I went back inside the gallery, calm now, and faced the crowd one last time. A reporter called out, "Mia, what's next for you?" I took a breath, my voice steady, strong. "I'll keep painting," I said. "My art is my heart, my pain, my hope, my fight. I'll create not for approval, but for me, for anyone who's felt unseen. Your worth doesn't depend on someone else's validation." The crowd nodded, some clapping, and I felt a surge, a fire, my soul alight. I didn't know if I'd fully forgive my family, if we'd heal, but I knew I didn't need their light to shine. I had my own. Lila squeezed my hand. Elena nodded, and I stood before Unbound, my heart pounding, my eyes on the woman breaking free. I whispered to her, "We're enough," and meant it, a deep, unshakable truth. The night stretched on, offers and dreams on the horizon, and I felt open, alive, ready. I'd built this from my pain, my brush strokes, my refusal to quit. My family's doubt had hurt, but it had fueled me, and now the world saw me Mia, the artist, the dreamer, the one they couldn't break. I tucked my sketchbook close its worn cover, a testament to my journey, and walked through the gallery, my steps sure. The hurt was there, a faint shadow, but my fire burned brighter, my path wide and uncharted. I was free not from their words, but from their power over me. I'd paint, create, rise for me, for every heart that felt small. This wasn't the end, but a beginning, a canvas waiting for my next stroke. Have you ever found that freedom, that moment when you let go of their doubts and claim your own worth? How do you keep painting your story, building your light when the path is yours to shape? I'm here, still trembling, still growing, and I'm ready to see where this takes me.